I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome to the program. What is this? This is Hump Day, right? This is Wednesday. Congratulations, you found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. And if you want to help us do that, first of all, keep listening. Second of all, you can go to patreon.com/CNR and give us $5 a month and get the bonus weekly video. If you are so inclined, we would appreciate that. Also, you can go to YouTube, subscribe, facebook.com/Conduit News. I mean, many of you out there right now are hearing this program on a radio station, and we appreciate those radio stations for carrying the show so that we can bring you Arkansas news, politics, as well as everything else going on. But if you want more and you don't just want to hear us on the radio, you want to have us, you want to have the show, you want to listen to the show, you want to watch the show anytime, then you just go to conduitnews.com and just go to all of the digital platforms or whichever one that you want. Probably pick one, I would say. But be aware of the others in case, Facebook goes away. Facebook's now trying to get into the currency business, and so I'm sure that's going to work out well for them. I mean, as long as they have the blessings of, the people who are in the currency business. That's a very specific business to go into. Pretty cutthroat business. Yeah, they're Facebook is coming out with like a cryptocurrency, Joe, called the Libra. So somebody's got to stop these people. Somebody's got to stop Mark Zuckerberg, and I mean they're going. Some people are saying this is going to end up being the social credit score. What they're doing over in China. There was an episode of Black Mirror where it was all about your social credit score, and if it was lower, meaning like a social media credit score, and if it was too low, you couldn't get on a plane. And so this girl had a pretty decent score in this Black Mirror. This Black Mirror is kind of like a really dark Twilight Zone where there's just different episodes. And this girl wants to go to the wedding of her friend. So she's got this friend that has a much higher credit score, elite. And she's like maybe middle class, upper middle class social credit score. And it's just a story about how these little things, everything goes wrong. Because if you do something to somebody, they downvote you and you lose social credit score. It's kind of like that. There was also a show called The Orville, which is a spinoff of Star Trek. It's not a Star Trek show, but and they go down to a planet where everybody has a social credit score. Anyway, we've seen these themes before. Anyway, by the time she gets to this girl's wedding, the girl wants nothing to do with her because the process of getting there, she's lost so much credibility and status because of all of these happenstance things that have basically made her totally homeless. And then she, basically freaks out and ruins the wedding. Anyway, the point is, China's actually doing this, but on a much more, it's even worse because if you associate with somebody that has a low credit score, it'll hurt your social credit score. Things like you won't be able to ride public transportation. If you go to websites that they deem inappropriate, the government deems inappropriate, that will affect what you can do in society. And folks, all I have to say is that we have the technology right now. It's just a matter of how many people are going to use it. But right now, we have the technology to enslave ourselves, to enslave our society, to enslave our populations. Right now, as we speak, many of us are already enslaved because we can't put the phone down. I have trouble putting the phone down. I have trouble spending time with my family and saying, I can't look at the headlines anymore. I can't look at the news. I can't look at Twitter. I can't. But then you have these urges. And you're like, I hadn't looked at my phone in 30 minutes. It's mental. It is absolutely mental. So I would encourage you to try to, just on the phone thing, I mean, just try to participate or try to resist a little bit and have some discipline, you know. Things are good in moderation, but my goodness, it's just terrible. We have the technology to enslave ourselves. And right now, I mean, you can just see it. It'll be convenient. Have you ever thought, I've thought before about how easy it would be if I could just think a text message and it would send. Because sometimes, you know, you have all these text messages that come in. Everybody texts, and, you know, I've got arthritis in my hand. I've got, I have a injury from when I was younger, and I actually don't have feeling in my part of my hand. A lot of people don't know that, but I don't. And anyway, what that really means is I end up hurting my hand without knowing I'm hurting my hand. Anyway, so I've thought to myself, I just want to get, when I get a message, I want to respond to it as fast as I can. And you think to yourself, man, this would just be easier if I could just think the text. Not technology's being worked on right now if it's not already here in some sort of prototype form. And the answer is no. Yeah, it might be awfully convenient, but no thanks. I don't think I want to do that. I don't want to merge technology with my brainwaves. Sorry. But it's the next step in evolution. I don't know. I've seen Star Trek and I've seen the Borg. I'll pass. There's a reason. Let me just keep throwing nerdy references in there. There's a reason the Battlestar Galactica wasn't a network ship. A network ship. You know what I'm talking about. 870-275-9799. So here's this story real quick. I'm running out of time here. I got so many stories to get to today. We also are going to talk to Mr. Dan Borm from the Patriots VEC 746. That's going to be fun. Also, at the bottom of the next hour, 7:33, we're going to be talking with State Representative Brant Smith. He has a story that he is, he's just been hearing from a lot of constituents on. And it has to do with the Arkansas School for Math and Science. And we're going to tell you about what's been going on with that. I've been hearing about this for a while. Haven't really been able to talk about it much because I've just been trying to verify some things. Also, a reminder that the grades are posted. The grades are in. If you want the scorecard, the end quote, scorecard, you can go to conduit4commerce.org. Check it out. I ran into a listener of Conduit News in the grocery store yesterday, and he said, really appreciate the scorecard that you guys did. It's very, very helpful. And they really appreciate it. And you know, the rankings mean something to a lot of people. There is a story in the Gazette this morning that is news to me. Deborah Hale Shelton writing that there was a pro-gay message put on an official UCA, University of Central Arkansas, sign. This is over at arkansasonline.com, Joe. Its president cites advocacy worries, and it was removed. Well, the reason I'm telling about this is I smell a little bit of potential national controversy here. This is only a matter of time. This only has to get picked up by like the Huffington Post or the Daily Beast or something like that, and something like this could just go viral. So I'm just letting you know this is a possibility here. You got to know they're thinking about their ever rotating moral outrage as well as clicks, ad revenue. This will be something that the liberal websites can't resist. Working the left up into a frenzy. So apparently there was a sign posted on the University of Central Arkansas Torreyson Library. and they put, let's see, they put a Lady Gaga quote on the letterboard style sidewalk sign. Okay, so it was staff members of the library there at UCA put a Lady Gaga quote. What did it say? It was for the June 11 Pride Month. By the way, it's no longer Gay Pride Month. Have you noticed this? It's not Gay Pride. It's just Pride. Not Gay Pride, but Pride. If you wanted to be proud to be straight, it would be a problem. So it's not pride for that. That would be correct. So it said, Lady Gaga, being gay is like glitter. It never goes away. The president of the University of Central Arkansas said that the library sign, quoting the words, being gay is like glitter, it never goes away, said it crossed a line because it amounted to an arm of the university, the library. It's kind of like one of the most important arms for the students. That it was, the university was advocating, quote, a personal viewpoint. Personal viewpoint. So Davis wrote, this is the president, Davis wrote that advocating for the school's lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, and queer community was important, then added, quote, I believe that the intent of the message was to show support for the LGBT QRSTLNE, would you like to buy a vowel community, and the students and the faculty and the staff, but it was not okay for the university sign to be used to make a personal statement or advocate for a personal viewpoint, he said. That is the line that the sign itself crossed. Quote, unlike our student groups or other organizations, the library is an official arm of UCA, and when it speaks on that sign, which serves information regarding library hours, it speaks officially. We do have to be very careful that we walk the fine line between individual freedom of speech and institutional voice. Going forward, we will discuss the messaging plans for this sign and all university signs like it. All right, so there we go. Content on the sign changes from time to time, according to the Gazette, reflecting social events such as Black History Month, Pride Month. Again, it's Gay Pride Month, but not anymore. Because now you can't just say, that would be, the gays, they've enjoyed, I guess, gay privilege at this point, because they were the first group that was widely regarded as victims in the new civil rights movement, but then they added all these other letters, and so we got to get rid of Gay Pride Month. It's just got to be Pride Month. Huh? It's interesting. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm not really sure. I don't know how to get in the mind of the culture. But we'll have more on that in a minute, because it's very dehumanizing, according to the left, to just really have any opinion at all that is outside of the totalitarian opinion that the left believes that you must agree with. You can't just tolerate. They've gone from tolerating someone, which we all should do, in a free society. Tolerate somebody that you may not agree with 100%. That's no problem. We can be peaceful. We can do that. The left has gone from advocating tolerancy to advocating totalitarian thought. And it's not, you can't disagree with it and then just go and live your life, operate your business. You have to heartily approve of what's going on in society. And if you don't, the media and the left and the news priests will condemn you. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number. We're going to stop here, take a break. I've got a lot more to say, but back in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. Over at Facebook.com/Conduit News, and the YouTube channel, Conduit News on YouTube. Click the subscribe button and the little bell to receive notifications. Welcome back to the program this morning. Congressman Rick Crawford back with us. Rick, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well, sir. It's, again, always great to have you on the program. I'd love to start, if you don't mind, just kind of talking about where we are right now with the corrupt, apparently corrupt higher-ups in the Department of Justice and FBI during the Obama administration. And, you know, we still have Andrew McCabe and others. They're going out. They're making these statements. They're trying to capitalize on what President Trump said about how he would listen to people, you know, foreign governments and that sort of thing. And I'm just thinking, when in the world are we going to get justice when these people who, you know, did what they did, they committed crimes against this country, in my opinion? What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, you know, you've pretty well summarized it there, and it's a good question. When are we going
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
I do want to commend the UCA president here for taking down the sign, though. I mean, I think, well, the reason I guess I'd say that is it is an official position, and we hear all the time, anytime a Christian group or anything wants to do anything that's official. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, the Arkansas State football team was, where were they? They were playing, it was the first game of the year. They were playing Tennessee or something like that, and they had lost a team manager and a player in the off season, and so they came with this scarlet and black cross, I believe. It was going to just go on the back of the helmets. And somebody was like, this official endorsement of Christianity, even though the cross itself was a memorial. And I think the players who were deceased were Christians. They were just trying to honor their memory throughout the season. And that was a no-go because it was an official so they had to, I think they changed the memorial to something else. I can't remember. But anyway, it goes both ways.
Yeah, they ended up cutting the top and the bottom of the cross, so it became a bar.
Yeah, it just became a bar. Yeah. But I mean, it cuts both ways. If you're going to have an official university sign, quote Lady Gaga, that says being gay is like glitter, it never goes away. Is that what this anyway, so it is an example, certainly, of the university saying, you know what, have your freedom of speech, have your discussion, but officially we're just going to be, for the principles of you doing what you want to do individually, but if the university is going to have an official statement, it's not going to be that, which was going to infuriate the left, because the left doesn't see their worldview as a worldview that can influence. It's only Christianity, it's only the patriarchy, it's only traditional American values that are seen as hurting someone else or dehumanizing someone else or forcing it's only one-way street to them. They don't believe, just like an atheist doesn't believe that their unbelief and wanting it to be enforced in public life at all costs can affect those who do believe in a higher power. Atheism somehow gets this weird cop-out where they're saying, well, because I'm more scientific-minded, which is not necessarily true. That's an assumption that Christian people are not. But they say, well, I'm more, somehow in our culture, the news priests promote atheism as somehow objectively true, and therefore it's not a worldview. So when you want to go take a Ten Commandment statue down, that is somehow you're advocating for neutrality, when in reality the atheist is not advocating for neutrality. It is a worldview you're trying to force on somebody as you're complaining about someone else's worldview being forced on you. And that is completely lost with the news priests of the day. President Trump held a giant rally in Orlando last night, and it was packed. 25,000 people packed the arena. They started lining up 40 hours before the rally began. There were food trucks. There were merchandise sold. There was there were screens outside for the spillover crowd that couldn't get in. And wouldn't you know it, the president had something to say about CNN. Can we roll this tape? Let's roll the first one because this is the full comments, courtesy of Breitbart.com via Right Side Broadcasting Network. Let's go to the first one. Click right there and listen to this, folks.
2016 was not merely another four-year election. This was a defining moment in American history. Ask them right there.
Pointing to the mainstream news media cameras. They're saying CNN sucks.
By the way, that is a lot of fake news back there. That's a lot. That's a lot.
All right, stop. All right, now scroll down, and now we're going to listen to the CNN coverage. It started at the beginning, and you're going to hear Trump say, "That's a lie," and watch what happens.
That is a lot of fake news back there. That's a lot. That's a lot. You know what I say? The amount of press we have tonight reminds me of the Academy Awards before it went political and their ratings went down the tubes. True. This was our chance to reclaim our government.
All right, we've been watching the president kick off his re-election bid. He's been on stage for about 6 minutes. Within 2 minutes, he did talk about the economy, about...
And you want to
4 minutes, it was
all right, so
attacks
they
on the media.
They couldn't send it. They couldn't send it. This was after the CNN sucks chant. And like when the CNN sucks chant started, it's like the bat signal went out. And they're like, everybody, we got to analyze this. We got to cut away. We can't have him saying. There's probably some new weird policy somewhere with CNN when they cover Donald Trump rallies, you know. And, of course, remember, they started covering Donald Trump rallies because the liberal media thought Donald Trump was the easiest to beat of all Republicans. Remember that, by the way. So Hillary Clinton and the Clinton News Network, they were covering the rallies nonstop because they thought they wanted him to be the candidate. Boy, isn't that like falling into your own nets that you lay for someone? And that's continued. We've seen that over and over in the last 3 years. CNN sucks. They got to interrupt. And this was crazy on Twitter. Everybody was talking about it on Twitter last night, that CNN just can't take it. You can't take the heat, CNN. All of the mainstream media. You know, and so this is going to be very interesting over the next year and a half. We are going to really have another, you know, because people are going to say, well, maybe 2016 was a fluke with the polling and everything else. Okay, maybe it was. Maybe it was. But if it wasn't, and the president wins in a landslide, what in the world is the media going to do? Because let me tell you something. You talk about the Wizard of Oz curtain was peeled back in 2016, and it's continued to be peeled. But there's going to be so many people. Listen. Well, no, not so many people. There already are so many people. I mean, it just demonstrates that people don't believe them. That, you understand how crazy that is? I mean, we would be, you know, it would be dumb to assume that if a massive majority or a majority of Americans no longer believed what NBC, CNN, or MSN, meaning like when they begin to open their mouths, Americans don't even listen anymore to what they have to say because they are so sick and they have been burned so many times. Do you think the press would tell you that? Do you think there would be, you know, like, and even if they had polls, which I know they do, like, do you believe those? I bet the numbers are through the roof at this point with people who are sick of being controlled and lied to and intentionally deceived.
The justice done. And yesterday I was accosted in the Capitol by a reporter and asked about the president's comments about receiving quote-unquote dirt from foreign nations, what he called the FBI. Well, how about this? How about a candidate that called the FBI beforehand and asked for assistance on their campaign? And there are people in the FBI and the DOJ that assisted willingly. I mean, so we got, the media outrage over something like this is ridiculous. And that's how they escape scrutiny, quite frankly, is because the media carry the water for these bad actors in the FBI and the DOJ. And I would just want to clarify that the FBI and DOJ they're good people. They've got bad leadership. There's some bad leadership. That cabal in Washington has been calling the shots now for several years. We just had an open hearing in the Intelligence Committee, and there were two of the witnesses. You know, the majority party calls their witnesses, and then we get to call one. And they had two witnesses there, and neither one of them had read the Steele dossier, but both of them were there to critique it, and in a manner of speaking, and they acknowledged, well, they hadn't actually read it. And one of them had worked for both Mueller and Comey in his 24-year career in the FBI. So, how in the world are you supposed to get objective material, or objective testimony from a witness like that? And this is what we continue to see in Washington is, these committee chairmen in various committees that have got memorandums of understanding between the committees to cooperate together to damage the president in any way possible. And I'm really kind of sick of it. I just think they ought to go ahead and impeach the president. Go ahead and do it. Put your cards on the table and see what happens. Because this backhanded way of doing it, that they're basically doing an impeachment inquiry right now through all of these committee hearings that they do in the intelligence and oversight government, in judiciary and financial services. Just go ahead and do it. If you're that convinced, and then let the American people decide how they feel about it.
Do you think they're doing that to appease the radical, the far left movements of their party? Because, Nancy is afraid of AOC.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. This is a dirty little secret that, the Democrats, in middle America don't want to acknowledge, and that is that AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib are not majority makers.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, the Patriots of Act 746 are on a mission to educate the people of Arkansas about your gun rights, about constitutional carry, permitless carry. You don't need a permission slip from the government. And you can find out more. Go to Facebook.com, search for Patriots of Act 746. Here to talk more about that this week, because it's Wednesday at 6:30. Let's talk with Mr. Dan Borum is back with us. Dan, how you doing, sir?
Paul, I'm doing great. How are you this morning?
And I am fantastic. I'm fantastic. It's been too long, sir. I wanted to speak with you a little bit about what went on yesterday. Did I see that there was a hearing stream? Somebody was streaming a hearing, and I remember I heard, was that State Representative John Payton asking the Arkansas State Police about their concealed carry rules?
Yes, sir, that is correct. I didn't get to watch all of it, and I don't really have the full scoop on that, but that's something that we can look into just a little bit. What we have is, it looked like there was a review concerning the new requirements on the concealed carry program, which has to do with, I think they're requiring that you disclose medical records and things of this nature. And so,
so you kind of broke up there. So, and I saw this. I saw, according to the new rules, it seemed like it was a backdoor red flag law to where if you decide to get a concealed carry license, which, by the way, at this point, is only really useful if you're going to travel out of state. If you get a concealed carry license, when you sign that, you're now saying that they have a right to your medical records, right?
That is the new requirement in the Arkansas State Police concealed carry program, is disclosing medical records that may prevent you from being able to have a concealed carry permit. And what we have is basically an unconstitutional program. With the concealed carry program is an unconstitutional program anyway, and then you have unconstitutional requirements. And so the whole thing is garbage to begin with. And it appeared to be Richard Womack, Terry Rice, John Payton, Gary Stubblefield, and had called the ASP on the carpet and asked them to give them the statute that would criminalize a person to conceal carry without a permit. And obviously, it just left them speechless. They couldn't give them the statute because there isn't one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yet they are still striving to get 746 back on the table during legislation, and the whole purpose is so that they can bring a new requirement back to the state of Arkansas, so that you can open carry without a permit, but to concealed carry you must have a permit, which is the way Oklahoma has been for a long time until their recent legislation where they now have constitutional carry. And so Arkansas is trying to slide backwards rather than to go forward, and it's going to be very, very important for we the people to hold our legislators accountable and to encourage them to keep our inalienable rights intact, and not to allow more gun legislation to come on the table.
I just don't understand why a state agency would resist what the people have already decided. I mean, what I mean by that is the legislator voted the current law the way it is. They voted it in.
That's right, and we clarified it.
Yeah.
We clarified it with the resolutions in this past legislation, but yet they are continuing to ignore the law. They ignore their own laws. They ignore, in fact, in the codes that they wrote for the enhanced carry, they ignore their own laws as far as those who are teaching the classes. They don't hold them accountable. They don't hold these instructors accountable for the way that they're teaching it, their credentials, everything that they do. They're ignoring their very own requirements, and yet they want us to be able to. They want us to go along with the requirements that they're putting out. And we've got to just stay vigilant, Paul, and not allow these things to happen. And the only way that we can do that is to stay in touch with our legislators, and to stay on the up and up. I want to read something if I can. I was doing a little research just on our forefathers, and I was reading a thing about virtue among the forefathers during the days of the colonies. It said as the colonists became more virtuous, they began to take a more personal interest in the affairs of government and called for a speedy separation from England. As they became more virtuous, the abuses of King George became more intolerable for them to bear. In 1798, John Adams pointed out that our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. That's something that we have really got to take in consideration when it comes to legislation or requirements such as this. We have to be a virtuous people. Our Constitution can only perform correctly in a moral society. And when morality goes out the door, our Constitution goes out the door with it.
Dan,
and
do you think that? Yes. I agree with that. Do you think that's because we are so free, or maybe we were, and just because we have the freedom doesn't necessarily mean that we should act on that freedom in some instances?
Well, if we really look at the words liberty and freedom, there is a slight difference. Freedom basically says you can do anything that you want to do, how you want to do it, where liberty is more of a freedom within the circle of morality. And we need to be a liberty-loving people to enjoy the freedoms within the circle of morality. And as James Madison warned us, he also warned us about apathy towards government. And he said, I go on this great Republican principle that the people will have virtue and intelligence to, listen to this, to select men of virtue and wisdom. Is there no virtue among us? If there be not, we are in a wretched situation. No theoretical checks, no form of government can render us secure. And our forefathers understood how important morality is among government. And that goes back to we the people. Basically, the Constitution is nothing but pen and paper. It's just ink and paper. But without it, if it doesn't have an enforcer, it's rendered worthless. And the enforcer of the Constitution is not government itself, but it's we the people. And we must be a people of virtue in order to enforce the Constitution in its original context. Without that, we continually have this kind of requirements that come up and to infringe upon our inalienable rights, such as being able to arm ourselves for the purpose of self-preservation. And so then it becomes more and more of a privilege rather than that God-given right.
Yeah.
And so we have got to be vigilant and to stay on our toes.
I really appreciate, we're talking with Dan Boren with the Patriots VAC 746. I really appreciate the truth that you just spoke to that, because what you're essentially saying is that the less, the more corrupt, the more immoral, the less virtuous we become, the harder it is to hold our society together in the confines of the Constitution.
That's exactly right.
And here's,
that's exactly right.
Yeah, it is. And here's the reason. You don't want to adhere to it. You have to have, if you're going to police a immoral people, you have to have a strong hand. You have to have a strong arm. And
that's right.
That's what's going on. So we have, you know, the less virtuous we become, the more people want to take and are taking extra constitutional means to try to police us. And this is in the context directly of the Arkansas State Police. They believe they want access to your medical records because they just they can't, you know, they can't tolerate this current level of freedom because they would rather assume that, well, it's the government's responsibility to decide whether or not you're responsible to protect yourself, family, or property, to basically have the right to self-preservation. And what ends up happening, and what we have seen, is a spiral out of control, Dan. And Francis Schaeffer, theologian Francis Schaeffer, talked about this at the beginning of his book, How Should We Then Live? When he basically said, you know, in this post-Christian society of America, which he kind of said it was post-Christian back in 1974 with Roe versus Wade. He said the Christian consensus was over at that point when you're going to allow the murder of babies. And he said basically you're going to have God pushed out of public life. And when that happens, because I know you know this, Dan, but for our younger audience, when we talk about a moral people, you only get that morality, what's right and what's wrong, from the image reflected from us, from God, from a holy and perfect God who's
that's
just.
Correct.
And
that is correct.
But the more immoral you get, and the more you force God out of public life, the more government comes in and says, now, we've got to try to police this immoral behavior because it's not good. It's not good if you don't honor your father and mother, you know? I mean, this doesn't help our society. It makes us worse. And how many fatherless homes do we have, too? I mean, when you don't love and take care of your kids. And so, but then immoral people always find a way to break the new requirements, the new laws, the new policing. So then the government comes back and says, well, maybe now we need cameras everywhere. Right? And then that doesn't work. And you know, I'll go back to my first argument. Now we have the social media technology, social credit scores, this is all what's
Right.
coming now. I'll let you respond to that, Dan, but I really appreciate your point of view this morning.
What you're saying, Paul, is absolutely correct. What it is, to boil it down in a nutshell, with a society that grows more and more immoral comes more and more laws and legislation placed upon all of us. That is, along with those who are striving to maintain morality, these laws come down upon all of us. And it means more government control over a society, because freedom, true liberty, and freedom, as our forefathers intended, can only work within a moral society. So you just throw all of these things out the door, and then you're going to lose liberty completely.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that being said, it's been a pretty dark time here recently in the state of Arkansas. But I want to encourage everyone out there, our listeners, those who are a part of Patriots of Act 746. I want to encourage you to lift your head up. I want to encourage you to stand up and get that grit in your craw again. And sometimes we just want to throw the towel in and just say, the fight is too hard. It's so hard. I just don't think I can do it anymore. Think about what our forefathers went through, and think about all of the sucker punches that they got, and how that they had the wind just knocked them completely out of their cells, and they just felt like falling to their knees and giving up. But they didn't. They didn't give up, and we can't give up either. This fight is never going to end as long as we are here upon this earth. We are going to have to continue to fight, continue to educate our posterity, so that they can carry the fight, they can carry the torch after we are long gone. If we don't teach our young people and teach them moral values, and teach them what our forefathers intended and our inalienable rights, then we're going to lose this thing. We must be vigilant, hold our heads up, and I know that the late Senator Linda Collins Smith, that's exactly what she would want us to do. Stand up and keep fighting for that which is good. That's what she did. She was a great supporter of the Patriots. She attended as many of the luncheons that she could. She encouraged, and she was just a wonderful person. And we need to carry on with what she would want us to do.
I agree with that, Dan. I agree with that, Dan. Speaking of, and I appreciate your kind words towards her, and I know how much the organization meant to her, because I talked to her about it many, many, many times. You guys have a big event coming up, though, in Fort Smith, don't you?
Yes, we do. June 29th at the Western Sizzlin Steakhouse on Towson Avenue, beginning at 2 o'clock that afternoon. We have Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin that's going to be coming as our guest speaker. We're going to have several legislators, senators, representatives that are going to be coming, that have already committed to coming. We have people traveling from across the state that's going to be attending this event, and I'm just looking really forward to meeting a lot of new people, and hopefully getting an opportunity to educate a lot of people upon concerning our rights here in Arkansas, and get more people involved. That's the idea, is to get more people involved.
I think that's the key. I definitely think that's the key, Dan Borum, and it's always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much for I love those quotes. You always bring these amazing quotes from the founders, and I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of the week, sir.
Paul, thank you for having me on, and God bless, and y'all have a great day.
Absolutely. You too. Folks, it's Patriots Fact 746. You go to Facebook.com, search for the Patriots, ask to become a member of the closed group today, but it's 17,000 plus people here in Arkansas, and they certainly are on a mission to just educate the people about what the status of Arkansas gun laws are. Decriminalization of carrying a weapon is the reality here. Also, the grades are posted, the grades are in, the scores are in, whatever you want to say. Conduit4commerce.org. You can go there now and get the scorecard. It's free. You just check out what your legislator has done here in Arkansas in the wake of the 92nd General Assembly. I mean, there's a few things that are happening, right? You have coming up on July 1st, we all get to start paying internet sales tax because of the 92nd General Assembly. Coming up in October, we all get to pay 3 to 6 cents more at the pump because of the Arkansas General Assembly. So, here it is. Go check out the scorecards. But there were some good things done. But just, you be the judge. Was there more good, more bad? Go to conduitforcommerce.org. See how your legislator did. Ask them how they voted then, and just use it as a resource and a tool. And we would remind you to always be respectful, always be congenial when you engage with legislators, even if they did something or voted a way that you disagree with. Because you know what? They might have just made a mistake. You never know. They might have just made a mistake, or they might have bought some piece of carefully crafted language that we now know to be completely untrue. Yeah, I mean, like if what the establishment in power was telling the rank and file, like, hey, we need you to vote for this tax increase, but don't worry, we promise, when it's all said and done, the people will be taxed less, or the people won't be taxed more. There won't be any more money coming from them to the government once we get all of our agenda through. Like, can you imagine if that was promised, and now you look at the DFA numbers, and you see, by the way, feel free to give us what you think your number is. I know what the number is, but it hasn't been released yet. It's all public knowledge. You can go find the information yourself, but stay tuned to conduitnews.com for those official numbers and reports sometime in the future. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. It's Conduit News. Back in a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Those seats were Democrat seats regardless of who ran. That wasn't going to change. There was no net effect to electing those three individuals with regard to the makeup of the Democrats in Congress. That wasn't going to have an impact because that was not a net change there. What this does is puts pressure on people like Daniel Lipinski in Illinois, Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania, Kurt Schrader in Oregon, Colin Peterson in Minnesota. Those are the majority makers. It's people like that who can win in marginal districts or even R-plus districts, and they're having to go home to their people and explain why their speaker has become a socialist. And the reason she's done it is because she's trying to get out in front of these clowns and show that she's the preeminent Democrat in America, and nobody's going to out Pelosi. So she's getting out in front of them to make sure that she's giving the appearance that she...
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Trump. Last night, that Orlando rally was packed. Everybody in the mainstream media looked for them to do some sort of mental gymnastics as a result. By the way, Donald Trump is going to be driving the narrative. What Donald Trump does, what Donald Trump says, is going to cause the media to react. That's what's going to happen through the next year and a half. He will be in control. The media will attempt to paint him as not in control, but trust me, the stuff he says at the rallies, the stuff he is going to break through and communicate. And if they keep broadcasting these rallies live, it's only going to help the president. So I would look for a few things to happen, especially if it's Joe Biden as the nominee. Facebook, Twitter, Google, they will start to censor all of the videos of Joe Biden touching little girls, making them very uncomfortable. They will start to censor that. And then they may stop covering President Trump's rallies, campaign rallies, altogether, meaning they just don't. I think that's going to happen. And then people are going to turn to the internet. Then, of course, you'll have you'll have more censoring and things like that from groups like Right Side Broadcasting, which is a popular YouTube channel that just from what I can tell, follows the president around from speech to speech to put it on YouTube. So it's a very valuable service. There's a lot of patriots on that platform. The president announcing that he is going to begin the deportation for millions of illegal aliens. I think right now that 7,000 a month are being deported. There's a lot more than that coming in. President Trump revealed late Tuesday U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement will initiate removal proceedings for millions of foreign nationals deemed illegally present in the United States. Next week, ICE will begin the removing process of millions of illegal aliens who have illicitly found their way into the United States. They will be removed as fast as they come in. Mexico, using their strong immigration laws, is doing a very good job of stopping people long before they get to the southern border. Guatemala is getting ready to sign a Safe Third agreement. The only ones who won't do anything are the Democrats in Congress. They must vote to get rid of the loopholes and fix asylum. If Trump has, in fact, and I don't have any reason to doubt this Mexico agreement, threatening the tariffs, getting the agreement, then getting a secret agreement, if the president has successfully negotiated these other countries doing something about this, and it actually works, you talk about a big campaign victory. Like, I still want to build the wall, but because Congress won't let me, I'm just going to use my diplomatic powers and try to make something happen. The announcement came hours after the U.S. State Department spokeswoman Morgan Ortagus announced the U.S. would be cutting aid to 3 Central American countries, massively contributing to the influx of migrants crossing the U.S. southern border. The cuts have been eased since they were first announced. Instead of cutting more than $615 million in aid to Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, the U.S. will just cut $432 million in previously approved projects and grants. So we will see what happens here. A lot of people in the media. Here's another prediction. The media will also try to paint Trump as a liar and a failure on the border. Okay? And it's going to be hypocrisy at its finest, because they have said that walls are immoral, and they have said that there is not a real crisis on the border and everything's fine, right? As the president was trying to communicate to the American people. But now that it's election time, the press is going to play all of the times that the president said he would build the wall and get immigration under control, and what they'll now do is say he didn't build it, and he didn't stop it because there's this many people coming in, which is going to have the opposite effect the media will want it to, in my prediction, because if the mainstream media starts to show immigrants daily pouring over the border in an effort to make Donald Trump look bad, do you think the American people are going to vote for a Democrat who won't attempt to do anything when it comes to U.S. sovereignty? No, they're still going to vote for President Trump. More so.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
She's actually driving this ship. What she's doing is she's driving this ship into an iceberg.
I certainly hope so. I mean, I think the Republicans' chances of retaking the House in 2020 go up exponentially, especially if they impeach the president, which, I mean, do you think that they're eventually going to do that? I mean, I think that Nancy knows that that would be a net loss, though, because the American people don't support impeachment according to the polls.
Well, this is why they're doing what they're doing, because she knows that she can't impeach, because that's a loser. So what they're going to do is harangue the administration with subpoena requests and do all the things that you would do in an impeachment without actually declaring an impeachment. So this is sort of a somewhat of a political Cold War, an impeachment Cold War, if you will. And they're doing all these little backdoor maneuvers to do what they would do in an impeachment proceeding, but just not call it an impeachment proceeding. This way they get away with doing it without actually doing it. So, I mean, I would say, you know, just have the courage of your conviction, do it, and let the American people decide, because I guarantee you that dog won't hunt.
Mm-hmm. We've been waiting on Inspector General Horowitz's report for a while. It was supposed to be out sometime this month, and because, according to reports, there's new information that's been given to the Inspector General, and now the report's going to be delayed. You have any idea what that new information is and when we can expect that report?
Well, I can tell you it has been reported that there are a number of findings that he conducted over the last 30 days, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 IG inspections, individuals within the FBI and the DOJ, and it's amazing what they found. Okay, so you had a guy running, basically, an FBI employee running a service garage in the FBI parking garage where he was doing maintenance on FBI agents' cars, I guess, right? You had, one woman that was, I don't know if she was muling pot or what the deal was, but this was an FBI employee, DOJ employee. I don't know if she was an agent, but she was an employee of one of those two agencies. And they cover all this stuff up. There were 6 separate incidents, and it's these type of kind of low-level, not necessarily threatening national security, but certainly a gross breach of conduct and a gross misuse of taxpayer dollars, and yet they've covered that up. And so that's an indication of kind of what's going on there. That's in Washington, by the way. It's not as though we've got FBI agents in Jonesboro running some kind of scam or something like that, right? No, this is all coming out of Washington. So those 6 individuals, that came to light, but there's more, and there's so much more, and it's so much deeper than that, and so much more dangerous than, changing somebody's oil in the FBI garage, that this got to be turned over to the new investigator, the U.S. attorney from Connecticut, and this is a guy that's going to get to the bottom of it.
Yes.
And that's what's got him afraid. This has got people. You haven't heard a heck of a lot from Comey in the last couple of weeks. He's kept relatively quiet, and he had been getting out there on Twitter quite a bit, trying to make noise. And then McCabe is in the crosshairs. Obviously, you've got Peter Strzok and his paramour, Page, and a laundry list of other bad actors in the FBI and the DOJ. If we don't clean that mess up and trace it back to how this whole thing was, the genesis of this, which is the Hillary campaign, the DNC, contracting with Coey Perkins law firm, contracting with Fusion GPS to hire Christopher Steele. And, oh, by the way, Nellie Orr was under contract with Fusion GPS. He just happened to be married to Bruce Orr, one of the top executives in the Department of Justice. And all this information they're collecting with an already discredited source on the front end. This guy, Christopher Steele, had been he'd been removed as an FBI informant for unreliable information. But he was good enough to go and conjure up this crazy story that allegedly took place in Russia involving Donald Trump. This was just a contrived, commissioned by Hillary Clinton, carried out by agents of the federal government to help her campaign. And then you've got the temerity to stand there and ask George Stephanopoulos to stand there and ask the president, would he look at information coming from a foreign source? Give me a break.
What about the FISA judge or the judges? Do you think that they believe?
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program today. Just know this, that we cannot do this show without you listening to it. We need you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We need you to get the podcast. If you don't catch the show, you can go get the audio-only podcast. This is what we need you to do. The telephone number, 870-275-9799, if you would like to contribute to the program. Also, you can sound off at facebook.com/Conduit News. Oh, talking about the phone. Yeah, so we kind of told you guys last hour that, well, I was just kind of, confession's good for the soul, bad for the reputation. I was kind of confessing to some of you out there that the cell phones are addictive to me, and I have to intentionally put the phone down, and I'm trying to just quit. It's a conscious effort. I don't want this thing to be something that takes away from the time I have with my family and everything else. And there's something really weird about what the phones are doing to us socially. I can't imagine. I can't imagine what the next generation is going to be like socially if they're just in their phones all the time. I tell you what it's going to mean. It's going to mean that 30, 40 years from now, the most valuable skill will be somebody that can actually captivate someone's attention by just walking into a room and communicating with them. Because I think there's going to be a lot of people who are just not going to really know how to communicate other than typing something via text. They're not going to actually know how to. Verbal communication the art of it is going to get less and less. It's just going to get less and less complex. So we have Lynn on Facebook that says, kind of hard to put the phone down when Paul is on the radio. Well, I understand that. I'm not saying you don't use your phone to listen to the show or watch the show. Okay, we need you to do that. Yeah, flattery will get you everywhere. I'm saying just, put it down at some point. Folks, we're going to be talking with State Representative Brant Smith coming up here at 7:33. We're going to be talking about some controversy in the Arkansas School for Math and Science. We'll tell you about that soon. In the meantime, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Did you hear what she said, Joe? She said that Donald Trump. No, but this was a big. She said she had one of those Instagram live videos, and she said that Donald Trump is operating at the southern border concentration camps at the southern border.
Oh, yeah, I did hear about this.
Okay, so you did hear about it. It is crazy. This is what she said. She said, quote, "The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border, and that is exactly what they are. They are concentration camps. And if that doesn't bother you, I don't know. We can have, okay, whatever." This is a quote. I want to talk to the people that are concerned enough with humanity to say that we should not, that never again means something, and that the fact that concentration camps are now an institutionalized practice in the home of the free, it's extraordinarily disturbing, and we need to do something about it. This week, immigrant children were moved to the same internment camps where the Japanese were held in the earlier 20th century. And this is not even about a crisis this is not just about the immigrant communities being held in concentration camps being a crisis. This is a crisis for ourselves. This is a crisis on if America will remain America on its actual principles and values, or if we're losing to an authoritarian and fascist presidency. And so I think that is, I don't use those words lightly. I don't use those words just to throw bombs. I'd use that word because that is what an administration that creates concentration camps is. A presidency that creates concentration camps is fascist, and it's very difficult to say that because it's very difficult to accept the fact that that is how bad things have gotten, but that is how bad things are. End quote. Alexandria Cortez. Now, so that's what she said, and now we have many prominent, multiple prominent Jewish groups are slamming Ocasio-Cortez for the Holocaust remarks. I mean, basically trivializing the Holocaust. Two Jewish prominent groups strongly condemned socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That's according to Ryan Saavedra. Let's see here. Who do we have? We have the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York, which represents over 60 Jewish organizations, and the Zionist Organization of America. In a letter to Ocasio-Cortez, the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York said they were deeply disturbed by her comments, which diminishes the evil intent of the Nazis to eradicate the Jewish people. The group said they would be happy to assist Ocasio-Cortez in scheduling the visit to a concentration camp so she can learn about what happened during the Holocaust. And, there are even people on the right who are virtue signaling out there, or claim to be on the right, and are virtue signaling out there that if you don't want people crossing the southern border from Mexico who are Mexicans in your country, end quote, your country, that you're somehow a bigot. And maybe there are people out there who are bigoted in their wanting to enforce the border, meaning like they have a problem, like their heart is not. It's not just about a nation of laws, and that borders have always been a thing, and it's that's a less globalist mentality. But maybe there are people that are actually bigoted towards that. But I don't know of any people on the right that are that have some sort of hatred for the ethnicity of those crossing the southern border. I think there's people that say the country is worse off economically and socially when you consider the level of violence and things like that has happened, so the country's less safe because we've had this problem. It would be one thing if this was something that happened 30 years ago and we fixed the problem and everything. But this is something that has been intentionally done to the people of this country from the higher ups. There is a reason the border has not been secure, and that's the real story here. Is our own government has betrayed the people, because you have corporate interests that want the cheap labor, and you have Democrats that want a future underclass so that they will constantly vote for Democrats. That's the real issue here. Not, oh, how heartless are you, average American, that, it has researched this and now you're some sort of bigot. No. So there's some virtue signaling going on out there. And it's like, hang on a second. Countries have always had the authority, ever since, biblical times, nations have existed, and nations have been able to govern themselves in whatever, whether it's monarchy. This person has the strongest standing army, so that you do what this guy says or whatever. Or now, we still have governments are instituted by men, instituting their just powers by the consent of the governed. Unfortunately, in the United States, or fortunately, or whatever, is that a bigoted thing for me to say? In the United States, Mexicans and people from South America are not the consent of the governed. They don't matter in terms of how we govern ourselves. They matter from a human standpoint. They matter from a spiritual standpoint. They matter on all those things. But it is not an immoral thing to do to control or prevent people from coming into your country unchecked. It's not. There are rules. You can set rules up, and you can make sure those rules are followed. Are we going to say, and I know we wouldn't say, and I've mentioned this before, that God was somehow unjust when he enforced the border of Eden and said, Adam and Eve, you can't be here anymore. Go. Anyway, 870-275-9799. That's the telephone number if you want to contribute. Sorry, I just saw some people virtue signaling the other day. I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's remarks were not condemned by everybody. They were condemned by prominent Jewish groups, but not by everyone, because Trump foe Jerry Nadler, is joining Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in trivializing the Holocaust, because Hake Barron over at the Daily Wire on Tuesday afternoon, House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler attempted to defend fellow New Yorker Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from accusations that she was trivializing the Holocaust with her comparisons of the situation at the southern border with the concentration camps of the Holocaust. In the process, Nadler, who is Jewish, managed to trivialize the Holocaust himself when he tweeted this, quote, "One of the lessons from the Holocaust is never again, not only to mass murder, but also to the dehumanization of people, violations of basic rights, and assaults on our common morality. We fail to learn that lesson when we don't call out such inhumanity right in front of us." So dehumanization. So the Democrats here have lost their minds. But speaking of dehumanization, do you know what's dehumanizing according to the left? Joe, do you know what's dehumanizing according to the left? Not wanting to date transgenders for the wrong reasons. So if you decide, according to the left, that you don't want to date a transgender person because you want to date a actual man or an actual woman, not someone who is a man pretending to be a woman or a woman pretending to be a man, that's no longer a legitimate reason to not date a transgender. I can't believe it. This is from Paul Boyce, the Daily Wire. I saw this. This was sent to me by my family. They sent this to me. They said, "Can you believe this?" The headline is Psychology Today. People refusing to date transgenders is dehumanizing.
So you're telling me my want to date a female person.
Human. Yeah.
I'm willing to throw a human in there on top of it.
Okay.
Is dehumanizing
some
to
people
transgender.
think that you never know. Yes.
People, because I don't want to date someone who pretends to be a female.
Correct. Yes. That's what Psychology Today is saying. Quote, reasons were still expressed using dehumanizing language. Listen to this, Paul Boyce. If you are a heterosexual cisgendered person, Joe, remind the audience who doesn't know the evolving terminology, what is cisgendered?
So first you have to understand that their ideas of gender and sex are two different things.
Right.
Sex is what you're born with, is how you're born, male, female. Gender is what you claim to be, and it's on a spectrum. Cisgendered is you claim to be, or you identify with the gender you were born with, which is your sex. So as a man, I am a cisgendered male. Yes.
Okay, normal.
Yeah.
normal, the majority of people. So if you're cisgendered, you're basically
you're
like
the average. You're the average human being.
You're basically like most people.
Yeah.
Not the 1% or what, probably less. I don't know what the percentage of transgender is at this point. I mean, people who are gay, people who are gay, it's less than 5% or something. I mean, I'm sure that's growing.
And transgenderism is probably less than that.
It's got to be. Okay, so if you are a heterosexual cisgendered person who only wishes to date heterosexual cisgendered people, then shame on you for dehumanizing transgenders and the non-binary, according to a recent article published in Psychology Today. If somebody was reading this like back in the 80s, they'd be like, non-binary? We found life on another planet. We found some species called the non-binary. I mean, you wouldn't know what that meant. The non-binary, it sounds like some sort of, it really does. It sounds like if...
There's another species of human. It's called cisgendered.
Exactly. It's like, what the heck's going on in 2019? Okay. The article in Psychology Today explores a study written by Karen L. Blair and Ray Ashley Hoskins in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, which essentially chastises people as bigots for the sin of being attracted to a man who is an actual man or a woman who is an actual woman, while also arguing that the prevailing attitude contributes to the psychological harm of transgenderism. This is what I mean when I said last hour about the totalitarian mentality. It's no longer it's no longer being tolerant. They don't advocate for being tolerant of somebody you disagree with. They want totalitarian agreement, meaning you can't disagree at all. Meaning, just the fact that they know that in your mind you might treat them with respect but disagree with them, but not tell them so or decide to live your life a different way, that's maddening, I think, to some. It's almost like thought crime, you know? When first conducting their study, Blair and Hoskins asked close to 1,000 participants what kind of partner they preferred and gave them the following options: a cisgender woman, a cisgender man, a transgender woman, a transgender man, a person with a non-binary gender identification. Unsurprisingly, 87.5% of those polled said they prefer the first two options, depending on which way they swing: cisgender man or woman, respectively. Non-binary and transgender people were at the bottom and typically were only chosen by people who identified as bisexual, gay, or some other type of sexuality. For heteros, the results were other cisgender heteros. The authors find this deeply problematic and believe the attitudes need to change. Quote, this is from the Psychology Today article. If trans and non-binary people lack access to one of the most stable sources of social support, this could explain some of the existing health disparities within trans communities. Looking more closely at the patterns of responses, it also became clear that individuals were least likely to express an interest in dating trans women, even if their sexual identity would otherwise indicate an interest in women, i.e. straight men, lesbian women, or queer bisexual individuals. Indeed, nearly 20% fewer people indicated an interest in trans women than would have been expected based on the sexual identities of the individuals within the sample. And this is news to them. Like, you talk about being in a completely different reality. Like, talk about, like, why would you ever think? So we know what their goal is. Their goal is for a cisgendered male. So I am a man, I am heterosexual, so I like women. Their goal is to get me to consider or find sexually attractive or desirable a biological man who has transitioned into being a woman. Their goal, apparently, it's right here because we know what they find outrageous. Their goal is to have men who are heterosexual and women who are heterosexual to date and accept in terms of what they're trying to change desires. Why would that be your goal? Why would that be your goal? What is wrong with even the way it is now. Just letting people be themselves. Why are you trying to change what the social stand, what is socially or morally acceptable?
Just think about the study they just ran that they're talking about on this, where 87% of the people that were asked and were part of this survey preferred the first two gender types. And that's a problem for them, because if this is 100% representative of the population of the country that we live in, that means only 13% of the country is actually with them in their in their political stances.
In their political stances.
Which we know that's an inaccurate representation, that it's much less than 13%.
I know we have to go to break, but this is the last part of the article I want to read. The most common reason for being unwilling to consider dating transgender or non-binary people was that participants felt that they lacked information and understanding of what precisely these kinds of identities mean within the context of dating. Because nobody does, because they don't care. For example, many simply stated that they had never really considered the question before and were unsure of what it would mean to be in a relationship with a transgender or non-binary individual. Other reasons, however, were less about lacking information and more about a strong dislike for trans people. I don't think it was a dislike for them. I think it was, no, I want to be with an actual man. I don't want to be with somebody who had their manhood chopped off, you know? Yeah, and then whatever happens afterwards, which is just, I just can't imagine. So it's a lack of understanding. They want to change the perception. So here it is right here. That's why they're going after kids. That's why you're seeing these library shows with drag queens, and they're trying to teach your kid. And they've got to go after the kids. They've got to go after the kids and change what their definition of acceptable is. And it's unlike anything I think you've ever imagined. All of the slippery slope people, everybody out there that was like, you can't do this, can't accept this as a society, it's a slippery slope. They are all 100% proven correct. I doubted them when I was in college. 100% correct. Back in just a moment. Believe they've been lied to, and there was some accusation, I think, a couple weeks ago, Joe DeGeneva saying that the judge has already referred this to the higher-ups, saying that they believe they were lied to when it comes to, the FISA application.
Well, I believe they were lied to, and I believe that if they don't believe they were lied to, given the information that we know and that I've seen and I've had access to, then they need to be removed from the bench. And there's a whole lot of people that don't really understand the construct of the FISA court and how that works, but that has to be reformed, and it has to be reformed soon, because we can't have a repeat of this type of thing. And the reason that this was, you can't have the sort of coffee shop relationship with these FISA judges, and there's a rotation with these judges. It's not as though they sit in this skiff in the basement of the Supreme Court and wait for people to come in and ask for a warrant. There's a process by which these warrants are presented, and the request is made, and the information is
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Joe's working on we got the meme of the day coming here. By the way, it's
good for what we just talked about.
Yeah, it is really good for what we just talked about. So, meme of the day coming up at 7:50-ish. We also got State Representative Brant Smith in studio. Going to be talking about the Arkansas School for Math and Science. Many of you are like, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you... Just wait. You want to hear what's been going on.
I know what that is.
Do what? Arkansas School for Math and Science. It's like a school down in what is it? Garland County? Is it? So yeah, Hot Springs. So we'll talk about that. Telephone number 870-275-9799. We're up against a hard break, but proving my point, I have been saying for a while. We talk about comedy, the left, anti-comedy, and here is an article I saw it yesterday, and I was like, oh. Proving my point once again. Late night and the decline of comedy at the box office. This article asks, is Netflix really to blame? No. It's the fact that comedians aren't funny anymore because for the most part, because they have to tailor everything to a politically correct message. And the ones that actually do stand-up specials and things like that, the late night people are all anti-Trump. Jimmy Fallon was actually really funny before Donald Trump got elected. Me and my wife used to watch Jimmy Fallon because he was so talented. The dude can sing and dance, and he was so talented, and he was funny, and he left the politics out of it. But then Trump got elected, and he had to do something different. He was told to, I guess. Back in a minute.
It's reviewed, and it's kind of almost like a circuit court where you've got different judges in a rotation, different kinds of judges that have expertise in this area, and they do a rotation to hear these cases and requests for warrants. And if they don't have fulsome information, they're probably going to make bad choices. And so these people know it. People like Andrew McCabe, they know it. They know that they can go in there and manipulate these judges, which is why there needs to be two things that have to happen in these FISA courts, in my opinion. One of them is there has to be an adversarial agent in the room. And by that I mean some disinterested party advocating for constitutional due process, regardless of who the request is made on for the FISA warrant. Somebody on the other side needs to be present, not to say, no, you shouldn't issue that for this reason or that reason, but to make sure that he or she is hearing the argument and making sure that it's all done within the confines and the prescribed parameters of the Constitution. So that's number one. Number two, there needs to be a transcript. There needs to be a stenographer present, and that transcript needs to be made available. Should there be any irregularities that come to light, they can refer back to the transcript and say, here's what happened. And it can remain classified. I'm not suggesting that those transcripts ever see daylight, but they do need to memorialize those proceedings in a way that we can go back and reference what exactly was presented to the FISA judge. So then we can make a determination, was there an attempt to deceive the FISA judge? Without those reforms, it's going to continue to be difficult.
Yeah, and those are really good ideas, really good reforms. And I know Congressman Crawford, you're doing an excellent job representing the state of Arkansas, representing District 1 on this Intelligence Committee. I think somebody else who has represented the state of Arkansas very well by representing the president, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I just would love to get your comment on her exiting from the White House and the president even urging her to come home and run for governor. But what do you think about what she's done on that national stage, representing our country, the president, and the state of Arkansas?
Well, I will tell you this, that she has raised the bar, and anybody that comes in behind her, I would not want to be that person, because she's done such a formidable job in engaging in hand-to-hand combat with a very hostile media establishment. And she, day in and day out, just the composure, the poise, the quick wit, all of those things that we've probably never seen to the degree that we've seen it with her. And she really kind of, I think, has set the standard for what any White House
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us. Joining us now again, we once again have State Representative Brant Smith is in studio with us. Brant, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Paul. Spent a couple of days down at the Capitol. Sat in on that hearing yesterday when the discussions on carrying guns in the state of Arkansas came up, and it was a very interesting discussion that muddied the waters once again.
Wow. So the just real quick. So the resolution clarifying Arkansas's gun laws, are they just kind of ignoring it?
Well, I don't think they want to admit that the legislature makes the laws, and that even though we tried to clarify what the law actually is, they don't accept it. And at one point, the ASP, Colonel Bryant, and the attorney for the ASP were even told point blank, look, your job is to enforce the law. We make the laws. And I don't think that's set very well, but, to their credit, they handled every question to the best of their ability, but they were not going to give an inch.
Wow. Well, I'm going to go back and listen to the entire thing, and maybe we'll get some of the...
Be interesting for you.
So I want you to start from the beginning. You got contacted by a constituent,
right,
about the Arkansas School for Math and Science down in Hot Springs.
Right,
So tell us about
ASMSA down in Hot Springs. It's they just recently celebrated in May their 25th anniversary. Just so people know, the reason I'm involved with finding out really what's going on at that school was I've got constituents here in Jonesboro that reached out to me very upset at the way their child was being bullied, treated, ostracized, and a lot of that centered, it doesn't have anything to do with academics because it's a very strong academic school. But when a student wants to be involved in student government, all the activities, plus has a life of their own where they may run, exercise, work out, and then that student is considered to have some kind of a mental deficiency because they're so energetic, it causes parents to wonder what's going on with my child at this school.
So you're saying that there was a constituent, they have our kid down there, and there was some sort of disciplinary action taken for active lifestyle. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because she eats healthy. She is participatory in so many, if not all of the activities, wanted to be involved in student government activities. And because of some of the pushback that she received, she was even told, "You'll never take part in anything to be elected down here at the school."
Okay.
So they were trying to marginalize her for just being a top-notch.
Successful?
Yes, because evidently it focuses back on the privilege walk.
Okay, stop. What's a privilege walk? I don't know what this is.
Paul, come on.
Okay.
Aren't you privileged? You're a white male.
Okay, so
I'm a white male. I'm privileged just because of my race. But
so there's is that an official thing? A privilege walk?
It is an exercise that I've been informed that when juniors enter the school during their orientation period, they go through what is called a privilege walk. And there's a list of questions. They line all the students up, new incoming students, and they will say, if you come from a family where you have a mother and father cohabitating, your home, take a step forward. If you're from a single parent home, take a step back. If you've got more than 50 books in your home, reading books, whatever, take a step forward. If you don't have books like that, take a step back. So by the end of the exercise, they have completely separated
the haves and the have-nots.
The haves, the have-nots, those with privilege and those that do not. I think one of the questions dealt with, does your family have personal transportation, more than one car? Take a step forward.
And the officials at the school are the ones asking these questions, or is this something that the students initiate?
I think this was an exercise conducted by Res Life because it is a dormitory style.
Right. They go to live there. They go to live there.
And so I attended. This family here in Jonesboro asked me to go down and sit in on the visitors board, kind of like a school board meeting, an update on what's happening at the school. And after I attended a committee meeting or two, I believe it was May 6th, I drove on down to Hot Springs, attended that meeting, and the room was packed. It's a small room, but it was packed. Every chair filled with standing room only.
Is that because there's more parents that have complaints about what's going on?
Well, I didn't know that when I first got there, and I went around and greeted everybody, shook hands, introduced myself, and I did have my Brant Smith State Representative badge on, so they knew, hey, a legislator's here. When we got to the point in that visitors board meeting where Tim Barnes, the chair, asked for public comments or any new business or, discussion. People lined up to talk. And it was everything from one young man claiming, he was sexually assaulted by a student on campus 3 weeks prior to that board meeting, and nothing was done about it, to faculty members that had been mistreated and fired. There were lawsuits pending with some of these people. Parents stood up and talked about the great education their children got as far as academics go, but that they were literally browbeat down every day. There were individuals who discussed the privilege walk, as I mentioned.
So browbeating because of why?
Well, bullying.
Okay.
I don't know what the motive for that was.
Okay.
Other than it kind of spun off from the privilege walk. And I sat there listening to all of this, and it just got worse. But to Mr. Tim Barnes' credit, even though there was a limit set for each person to speak, I think it might have been 5 minutes, people were trying to get their statement made, and he allowed them, even though the alarm sounded, to finish their thought. And so I was really proud of him for doing that, because I've been in meetings where once you're cut off, you're cut off. And he allowed people to speak completely what was on their mind. And so the center of gravity, and we talk about that, I guess, a lot more in the military, of where the problems are or what the situation is and who's involved, apparently focuses on the director for the ASMSA family down there. And his name is Corey Alderdice. And, he made his presentation, but people they felt like he needed to step up and acknowledge that as director, the buck stops on his desk. And he made claims later that he didn't know about the privilege walk. And I'm thinking, you've got a small school. Joe, what is it, like 250 students max? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you've got a school with 250 students and they're all top performing academically, with ACTs and SATs, I guess, as far as the high school testing records go. But he said, I didn't know anything about it. And I thought, how can you be the director?
A privilege walk. You didn't know anything about
that?
No.
And
what about the sexual assault?
Well,
and what
that
you say a man got sexually assaulted. So how does
well,
that
an adolescent.
An adolescent, yeah.
And the parent,
but a boy. So
yes, the parent. Listen, his testimony when he stood up and talked, he was trembling and shaking in front of the whole group that were there to explain what had happened, how he had gone to the administration and let them know. And I always assumed, okay, if something like that happens, these are court-mandated reporters. They should have immediately, before they did anything, contacted the local police department.
Right.
Filed a report, and then let the police investigate. Evidently, and there may be more of those cases, but they've not been properly handled by the administration. And so it just spun. I don't think it ever spun out of control, because Tim did a great job of letting people speak. I mean, if he had shut people down, there would, I can only imagine chairs being thrown or
so people
fists being pounded.
These parents were very upset.
Yes.
With what they're hearing from their kids.
And some of these parents that were speaking were graduates themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And one family had 2 of their children back in the school, and the mother had been a graduate. one of our legislators has 5 children of constituents in the school. And so, Paul, here's what I found myself pulled in, and my only point to go was just to represent my constituents.
Did you start investigating this?
We have, and I have, and here's something that I sent out earlier this month. But after that meeting was over, I walked out to head to my pickup truck, and I was swarmed by people wanting to tell me their story of problems. And some of the faculty have even come to me and said, we don't even have an HR program here that addresses grievances. And if we do try to mention a grievance, we are berated and made to think you're about to lose your job. And some of them have down there. But I sent this out to 8 colleagues this month. I'll just read it real quickly. Good morning, colleagues. Please forward this message on to any other legislators you may know who are interested in the ASMSA situation. As mentioned, we need to have a closed-door meeting to determine what needs to happen legislatively next. We need to separate fact from fiction and talk about what we are hearing from our constituents who have children at the school. I'm open to possible dates where we can all be in Little Rock. Please let me know your thoughts. After I sent that out, I started getting comments back. Brant, we've known about problems at the school for a long time, and they're talking like a year or 2 or 3. But nobody stood up to take it on as a personal mission to get to the bottom of it, find out what corrections can be made, and move the school forward with the integrity that a school of that nature needs to be. So I've got a running thread, as you can see, just comments.
Yeah.
And I've been surprised at some comments that people knew, but they never stood up to just put their hand up and say enough.
Right.
So,
well, and that's why I mean, I had a listener of the show contact me and told me some of this, and they specifically mentioned your name too, and said, hey, you need to talk to Brant. And so I think this is an attempt to maybe get some publicity out there about some of the stuff going on.
Well, and that's the reason I'm here, is I want this to be broad enough that if there are concerns or someone has had an issue that was never dealt with, this is their time to do that. And they can send me an email at Brant, BRANDT .smith@arkansashouse.org. And if necessary, I'll call you back. Otherwise, I'll just take your information and present it before Joint Performance Review. That committee is chaired by Representative Jimmy Gazaway, and we're looking at dates, the calendar now, and a proper date to call us all together and to get those involved at the administrative level. And the difficulty is, and this is kind of what pains me, because at the University of Arkansas level, because ASMSA comes under the umbrella of the University of Arkansas system, and apparently at the top, they prefer to turn this into a witch hunt and have berated in emails that I have members of the faculty or the Board of Visitors chair, and they're siding without hearing all the facts with the director. And that night at the hearing, or the board meeting, I even went to the director and I said, look, I've been in leadership for years and I've made errors, but if I addressed them quickly and apologized and said, I'm going to make course corrections, we're going to get back on track,
yes,
people were typically forgiving. And I said, even if there's a grain of sand of truth in any of these allegations, I said, Corey, please do the right thing and deal with it before it gets bigger. And I don't think he accepted that.
Okay, the idea of a walk, what'd you call it? A walk?
Privilege walk.
A privilege walk. Okay, this disturbs me because this is a political. It seems like this is coming from a political ideology of how they wish the world was, of recognizing, and if it's kind of smoke, it's like where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
So if that is undergirding your resident life policy, are there any other progressive concepts that are governing the decision-making process, how they treat students?
There probably is. One of the points that was brought up was several of the students wanted to establish a high school young Republicans type group on campus. They had the right number of kids saying, hey, we want to be on this, we want this at our campus, we've even got a sponsor, and they were denied. And the reports that have kind of come out stated they didn't meet the criteria, they didn't have enough students, they didn't have a sponsor, when in fact they did. They met all of the requirements, so they didn't want
a Republican
group on campus. And I talked to a senator yesterday, and
so it is political.
Well, and she commented to me that she had a nephew attend that school several years ago, and I guess he graduated from there. But while he was there, he got hooked on drugs because there is a drug culture on that campus. And
now Joe's saying, yeah, Joe, our producer in here, you went to this school?
For a little while.
All right, so he's a of course, there's drugs in every high school, but go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
but without parents, I'm sure it's...
Well, and so what happened was she said her nephew got hooked on drugs while he was there, and then when he moved on to university studies, he was found face down I think in his dorm room, dead from an overdose, and it all started back at ASMSA. And so more than likely, you can't weed out all of that garbage.
Correct.
But you can minimize it by good supervision. And on this sexual allegation that this young boy made, his father did reach out to me and say, look, I think my son overreacted. We don't think it was true rape or anything like that. It was just boys being boys. And so I listened to him for probably 35-40 minutes, and but the fact of the matter is it was never properly handled on campus.
Yeah.
So we need to review the policy of the school, the policies, their handbook, because people are saying no one follows policy here. There were students that were expelled this year that were still allowed to graduate. And so there were some things there's some inconsistencies from policy manual as well as following through. And I mean, if someone is expelled, they need to explain, well, why were these students allowed to graduate?
Yeah.
I've had parents contact me and say, did you know that some of these students self-identify as animals and they eat out of Tupperware bowls? And so
wait,
I'm thinking,
what?
I know. So here's the thing. Paul, my constituent's daughter, I would say she is an achiever. She may be an overachiever, but I got her ACT scores yesterday from her parents, a snapshot. She made 34 on everything.
Wow.
And so they were considering her mentally ill, or she could...
The administration of the school
hurt herself. They wanted her to go to counseling. They wanted her to be separated from the other students. And
so they're
punished.
punishing the successful, and then all this other, but it's okay to identify as an animal. I mean, the person that wants to be an animal needs to be in therapy. I'm so glad I'm not in high school anymore, by the way, because if this kind of stuff was going on anywhere near me...
In your earlier segment about gender and sex issues, I was thinking, I was living in Creede, Colorado, in the late 70s working for Homestake Mining Company. I hadn't seen a real girl in like 2 years, and the day my future wife showed up as a summer missionary out of Stephen F. Austin State University in her Baptist Student Union, I looked at her and I said, I'm going to marry that girl, because I hadn't seen a girl in 2 years. I didn't have any kind of gender identity conflict in my mind at all. That's a real girl. And, I've told you this story, but she wasn't allowed to date because she was on a mission. So the next question was, well, is there a rule about getting engaged? And she said no. And I said, would you marry me? And she said yes. And so that's been 38 years ago.
That's great. We're just going to skip the dating. We'll skip the dating and go right to the marriage. State Representative Brant Smith, thank you. Keep me posted. Continue investigating this. Let me know.
One last comment, if I can,
yes,
real
sir.
quick. I have a lot of respect for the teachers down there at the school who want to do the right thing. And they've reached out to me, and they're just asking for help. Mm-hmm. Parents are asking for help. Students. And I was willing to not move forward with any of this until after their graduation. And now, we were delayed a little bit because of the murder of Linda Collins. Mm-hmm. But now we're moving forward. And I'd like to ask, your listeners, remember, your legislators that are dealing with this problem, we want to make it better for our state.
Absolutely.
And we don't want to disparage University of Arkansas in any way, but they're so far north, they can't see everything.
Yeah, got to get to the bottom of it. State Representative Brant Smith, we appreciate it. If you have any information about any of your experiences down at the Arkansas School for Math and Science, reach out to State Representative Brant Smith. Folks, we got to take a break. Wrapping up the show. Back in a minute.
The poise, the quick wit, all of those things that we've probably never seen to the degree that we've seen it with her. And she really kind of, I think, has set the standard for what any White House spokesperson would aspire to. And so that's going to be a loss for the Trump administration, but this is a naturally occurring phenomenon in that the burnout for that type of job, quite frankly, I'm surprised she stayed as long as she did because of the 24/7. You're on call all the time. She's got small children at home. She's got a husband, and she's a family woman. And this was a major sacrifice on her part to be able to do it, and she did it very well. In fact, maybe better than anybody ever has.
I think you're right about that. Definitely a contender. Congressman Rick Crawford, it's always great to have you on, and I thank you for your candor and keeping us informed here back home, and just keep going. We got to get to the truth. I know you're pursuing it. I know it's tough with Adam Schiff. Now they have
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the show. I want to give a special thanks to State Representative Brant Smith for standing up and letting us know everything that's going on down there. Also, story I didn't get to today, but if you want to check it out, you can. This Zero Hedge article, quote, bums get a job. Instagram influencer couple. Now, influencers make a lot of money, right? They're paid to influence and, talk about products and stuff like this because they got so many followers. They have so many, a large reach. Check that out. Influencer couple slammed after begging for an $11,000 vacation. They wanted a GoFundMe for $11,000. Now it's time for your meme of the day. Meme of the day. From Quentin Tarantino's film, The Inglorious B Word, I guess. Not the B-I word. It's epic conservative memes. Brad Pitt, when he says, we're in the business of killing Nazis and boys, business is good. But in this case, it's we're in the business of making liberals cry, and boy, business is booming. Check it out. We'll tweet it out, the Twitter handle @Conduit News, as well as Facebook.com/Conduit News. Also subscribe to us on YouTube. Click the little bell to receive notifications. Arkansas, have a great day. Be safe.